For over 50 years, the moon has sat untouched by human hands. Now, NASA's Artemis III mission is preparing to send 4 astronauts back to the lunar surface. For the first time in history, that crew will include a woman and a person of color. But getting back to the moon requires a massive financial mobilization. The overarching Artemis program has already consumed between $86 and $93 billion, roughly 7 to 8 lakh crore rupees. This chart breaks down those costs further. Out of that total, the budget for the Artemis III flight alone sits between $5 and $10 billion. When you divide that among the crew, you are looking at a cost of $1.5 to $2.5 billion per astronaut. Even then, only 2 of those 4 crew members will actually make the descent to the lunar dust. The other 2 are strictly assigned to remain in lunar orbit. Here is where the math gets confusing. Despite the historic weight and the multi-billion-dollar price tag, NASA has acknowledged a very real possibility that Artemis III might not touch down on the moon at all. Instead, it could serve purely as a systems test in space. The central mystery is why the global space industry is willing to mobilize over 100,000 people and spend billions of dollars on a mission that might end up being a test flight without a landing. To understand the cost, we have to look at how this mission is built. Artemis III relies on a sprawling global supply chain that directly and indirectly employs more than 100,000 workers. The agency has contracted massive private aerospace companies like Boeing and Lockheed Martin to build the core hardware, alongside contributions from international partners like the European Space Agency. Every piece of hardware comes with an enormous price tag. The Space Launch System rocket, which carries the crew off Earth, costs $2 to $4 billion for a single launch. Then there is the Orion capsule, the vehicle designed to carry the astronauts through deep space. Just developing this single piece of equipment has consumed over $9 billion. The $10 billion mission cost funds a highly fragmented, collaborative deep space economy that replaces the single-agency model of the past. But the most complicated technological bottleneck happens in orbit. Getting from space down to the moon's surface relies on a completely separate vehicle, the SpaceX Starship Human Landing System, which was contracted for roughly $3 billion. This diagram shows exactly how precise the orbital mechanics have to be. The Orion capsule must launch from Earth, navigate to lunar orbit, and successfully connect with the Starship HLS that is already waiting in space. There is a major logistical complication here. The Starship HLS is too heavy to reach the moon with a full tank. It requires a complex web of supporting launches from Earth just to refuel it in orbit before it can even operate. Only after that deep space refueling is complete can the HLS take 2 astronauts down to the lunar surface and eventually propel them back up to meet the Orion capsule for the journey home. These deep space docking and refueling maneuvers are complex and largely unproven. Validating the safety of these maneuvers is exactly why NASA cannot guarantee an actual surface landing for this specific flight. Artemis III is a high-stakes stress test of deep space logistics. Validating the safety of the orbital mechanics takes priority over achieving a surface landing photo op. It helps to stop comparing this to the Apollo missions. In the 1960s, the objective was simply to plant a flag and leave footprints. Today, the overall goal is entirely different. The $10 billion mission cost is a mandatory down payment on permanent deep space infrastructure. Every untested mechanic on this flight, the private landers, the international modules, and the orbital refueling, are the exact systems required to establish a long-term human presence on the moon. Whether the crew steps out onto the lunar surface or strictly tests the hardware in orbit, the data gathered here is an absolute prerequisite for humanity's next leap. Because ultimately, Artemis III is the first critical billion-dollar stepping stone required to send humans to Mars.